The year is 1945, and the Japanese were blinded by the lights. Literally, the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed by the atomic bomb. This event would mark the end of World War II and start the Cold War. I could make an entire video about the Cold War, but we'll discuss that another day. The Cold War was extremely influential in fiction because the constant thought of being nuked gave many people inspiration, and this influence extends to this day. This can be seen in many different kinds of media, but the one we'll be discussing today will be video games. While there are hundreds of great and not great games in the subgenre, I'll be talking about the important ones. The original Fallouts, the new Fallouts, Stalker, and Metro. I divided the Fallouts between old and new because they're very different gameplay-wise and aesthetically. Here are the timestamps for specific games if you're interested in that, so let's start with Stalker. Stalker is a Ukrainian first-person shooter that takes place in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. While the world did not end in Stalker, I felt like I should include it because it is quite different. Basically, there was a second meltdown of the Chernobyl power plant, and this resulted in strange anomalies and supernatural artifacts to appear. This resulted in hundreds of privateers called Stalkers going to the exclusion zone to acquire artifacts to sell to organizations, governments, and private collectors. You play as one of these Stalkers in the game, and you will fight mutants, zombies, and your fellow man to get 6,000 rubles. In American money, that is $65. This means people risk their lives to barely get enough money to afford the next Call of Duty game. If you plan on playing this game, I recommend you choose the hardest difficulty because living in Eastern Europe is like the hardest difficulty in real life, so they built the game around that. And when they were creating the difficulty for the American man, they just gave everyone more health. So basically, the lower the difficulty, the more the enemies become bullet sponges. So for fast tactical combat, choose Master difficulty. Stalker AI is very good. Most game AI will just rush at you without even thinking, but Stalker's AI tries to flank you or even take cover to attack you. So firefights in this game are quite intense, since one bullet is enough to kill you. Stalker is also horrifying. In the first game, you go to a research bunker and it's haunted by something because when you walk in, furniture starts flying across the room and you hear the distant yell of a mutant. And that was enough for me to exit the game. The game is very atmospheric and it does not take long for you to experience that. There's no greater feeling than after a long day of massacring the local wildlife and selling your spoils to buy sausage and vodka, heading to a campfire and sitting down, hearing Russians talk to each other and play guitar. Around a few hours into the first Stalker game, you go to a bar to get a quest, and it's honestly fairly immersive, hearing the song play with people talking to each other offering you work. People love Stalker, especially Russians. There are compilations of Russians being lowjacks reacting to the Stalker 2 trailer. But during the development of Stalker, many developers were unhappy with their working conditions at the studio, with one of the developers saying in the parking lot of the studio there were 4 cars, 3 higher-end vehicles owned by the owner of the company, and 1 used car belonging to someone else. So with many developers unhappy and not feeling like they received a share of Stalker's success, many left to found 4A Games, which developed the next series we'll be discussing. The Metro series is developed by 4A Games, a Ukrainian Maltan studio. What? Audience, where do you think Malta is? If you said a small island in the middle of the Mediterranean, then you're right. I guess they moved the studio for, reasons. While Stalker was an open-world shooter, the first 2 Metro games are linear first-person shooters, and the third Metro game more open-world. So Metro is a game series based off a book written by Dmitry Glukhovsky, a Russian writer who spent a lot of his early life in the Moscow Metro system, and that gave him inspiration to write Metro 2033, a book which he published online on a website for free. The book got an audience because of its unique setting where World War III broke out and the people of Moscow fled to the city's metro system to survive. People would spend the next 20 years living down there, and this results in factions arising in the metro. We have the Fourth Reich, which is self-explanatory, Red Line, which is a group of communists, and Hansa, which is some kind of collection of stations of an army. You play as Artyom, a nobody from a station which is under threat of the Dark Ones. The Dark Ones are people who survived the nuclear war on the surface, and they got mutated to the point where they can do strange magic. So you leave your station to go on a quest to get help from Hansa. You will deal with mutants, bandits, ghosts, and stock sound effects, and much more. One issue I have with this game is that you spend much of your time following an NPC. There's no better example of this when you meet a character named Bourbon and you need to cross an underground bridge. The player can sprint her way through it in a few seconds, but Bourbon will take 5 minutes or more moving across the bridge. Speaking of Bourbon, on the final level with him, he gets beaten and uses these sound effects.
The boss? But of course! Then to the boss it is! Where else would you like to go, huh?
This game did not have much of a budget, so we used free sound effects. But where the sound effects fail, the weapon design makes up for it. With resources scarce in the Metro, people have to make weapons out of whatever they can. The semi-auto shotgun looks really nice, and there's this gun that shoots air, which is pretty cool. But I only talked about the first 2 Metro games. With the third Metro game, Metro Exodus, is the newest Metro game, and it's quite different from the previous games in the series.
Oh yeah, Mr. Crab.
In Exodus, you leave the metro tunnels and travel throughout the Russian wilderness to find a new home. I know, quite the thrilling setting. Exodus is the most refined game in the series with the best controls, great graphics, combat is much more smooth, and it's quite bug-free. Metro is one of the most original settings in gaming and is pretty fun, but Metro and Stalker still feel quite similar. They're both inspired off similar media and experience. When the Soviets controlled Ukraine, they were not nice to the Ukrainians, and ever since Ukraine became independent, the Russian Federation has not been nice either. So I'm guessing that created a lot of doomer energy, which inspired both the settings. I mentioned these games were both based off external media. Stalker and Metro were both inspired by Roadside Picnic, which is a book, and Metro was inspired off the game Fallout. So let's get out of Eastern Europe and head to America. Fallout 1 was released in 1997 and is credited with saving the RPG genre. The first 2 Fallouts are quite similar and have similar gameplay. Fallout is a turn-based RPG where point-blank shotgun blasts to the face are as effective as the United Nations. When you create your character, you choose your stats. The most important stats are luck and agility. Luck is nice because if it's high, it decreases your chances of running into Somali nationalists. And agility is necessary because if it's high, that means you have more action points during combat. Once you choose your stats, then you choose skills. You got the normal stuff that are in the modern Fallout games, and you got some stuff that is like gambling, which I put all my points into because it's a great way to make money, 100% risk-free. Okay, mistakes were made. I sold my bunker and bought this alleyway, jet-free since 2077. But I recommend you choose at least one combat skill. So I was planning on talking about both Fallout games, but the issue is Fallout 2 won't launch on Steam, and I only got it working after I bought it on GOG and fiddled around with it, so I'll just talk about Fallout 1. So I probably should give you some background on the Fallout universe before we talk about the game. So basically, everything stayed the same until after World War II, where the Soviets fell out of power and were replaced by the Chinese. Culturally, we stayed in the 1960s, and technologically we developed. Eventually, the world ran out of oil, so we invaded Mexico and Canada, and the Chinese tried to invade Alaska but failed. Then the company Vaultec decided to build some vaults which were completely meant to protect humanity in case of a nuclear war and were not intended for human experimentation at all. So in 2077, someone pressed a big red button and most of the world got covered in nuclear fire. Alright, so Fallout 1 starts with this creature telling you that the vault's water filter is broken and you need to get a replacement for it, which is found at Vault 15. You have 100 days to get a replacement. So to travel in this game you use this screen, so you click a location and you listen to some music made by Mark Morgan. But you'll travel to the settlement of Shady Sands, which if you're a Fallout lore expert, you will know it will eventually be the capital of the NCR, so you walk around this Turkmenistani village and engage in generic quests. Once you arrive at Vault 15, you'll find an overrun of mutated animals. Once you fight your way through the creatures, you'll find out the water chip is inaccessible, so you have to find a new water chip. The next settlement you'll encounter will be the Hub, which is a pretty big city with lots of stuff to do. First is Cannibal Guy, which you can do nothing about, versus Drug Dealing Guy, which if you kill will give you a lot of money. There's also Harold, who is a reoccurring character in the Fallout series. While at the Hub, you discover there is a water chip at the city of Necropolis, which is ran by ghouls. When you arrive at the city, you'll find it overrun by super mutants. You'll be forced to talk to one of them, and if your speech skill is high enough, you can tell him that you're a robot and he'll believe you. Once you get past him, you'll find the vault and the water chip, which you steal, and this will result in the city not having clean water. There's an other way to get a water chip without destroying the civilization, but that's too much work for me. I'm a busy guy. Once you get the water chip and return to your vault, the vault overseer will tell you that you need to destroy the super mutant friend, which will require you to do two things: destroy the source of the super mutants and kill their leader. So let's get started with getting rid of the source. Hey, future Hector here. I forgot to record my footage for the rest of Fallout 1, so I'll have to use other people's footage. Their names will be in the corner. Thank you. So once you arrive at the military base, you quickly discover that super mutants are there. Once you fight your way through and enter the base, you'll find these weird laser doors. The only way to get past them is by using your repair skill, but if it's not high enough, you can't really do much but spam the option. Eventually, you'll find some kind of control room with a computer, and if your science skill is high enough, you can bypass the computer and destroy the facility. If your science skill is not high enough, all you can do is press random buttons, hoping you won't blow yourself up. Once you destroy the source of the super mutants, now you have to kill their leader, who is called the Master. The Master is currently hiding out in an abandoned vault underneath a cathedral in the ruins of Los Angeles. Once you get to the cathedral, the easiest way to find the Master is by talking to this guy and telling him you want to speak with the Master. The Master's plan is to make everyone a super mutant because he sees himself as the perfect human. This is what the Master looks like. People use words like abomination or disgusting, but they're wrong. This guy is actually the perfect human. Look at that head, very aerodynamic. Third eye, very useful, not obese in the slightest. Look how skinny this man is. But once you kill the Master, this will cause the facility to self-destruct. Once you return to your vault, your overseer will tell you that since you saved the world, people in the vault will want to leave to be just like you. So he can't let you come back, and you must leave the vault. If you have the trait Bloody Mess, after he tells you this, you'll shoot him in half. Either way, the game ends with you leaving the vault. So after the success of Fallout 1, work on a sequel began immediately, and the game was Fallout 2, but due to Game Newell not selling games that function, I was unable to play it in time for this video. But the company that made Fallout went bankrupt and Bethesda bought the right to Fallout. This resulted in the creation of Fallout 3, which is just a mediocre copy of Fallout 1 and 2. So I'm gonna talk about Fallout 3 in New Vegas. You may ask, why not Fallout 4? To that I say, go to Brazil. So many Fallout fans like to argue about which is better, 3 or New Vegas, and this has led to many arguments with people I know. Fallout 3 starts off with you being born and creating your character. Then you spend the next 30 minutes growing up in the vault. Then your dad, Liam Neeson, leaves the vault and you have to escape. Then after you leave the vault, you go on a journey to find your dad. You may commit some war crimes on the way, but don't worry, all your dad will do is scold you.
You're still my son, and I love you, but I can't begin to tell you how disappointed in you I am.
If you're an idiot, you'll travel across the wasteland to find your dad, but if you're smart, you'll just travel to the location where he's located, Vault 112, which is pretty cool. Basically, everyone in Vault 112 is stuck in the metaverse, which is ran by a German Mark Zuckerberg.
Yay! I knew you could do it!
Perhaps not the most inventive approach, but persuasion can be quite powerful. Well done.
But German Mark Zuckerberg takes the form of a little girl, for whatever reason. To find your dad, you can listen to Mark Zuckerberg, or you can go inside this abandoned house which has a computer, and Dave from IT accidentally left a program that starts a Wu-Mao invasion of the metaverse.
一个坚韧不拔的纪录片在香港这座城市的设置，主演钱娥乐、罗欧斯、福波斯伊、瑞秋、莫妮卡和一些。
You will exit the metaverse and encounter your dad. You guys will go to the Jefferson Memorial to fix the city's water filter. Then you do a few minor favors for your dad. Then the Enclave, the remnants of the United States government, will invade the location and kill your dad. Then you do some garbage. Turns out the president is a robot.
Joe Biden. Joe Biden.
Then you do the best part of this game, Liberty Prime. He is a giant robot meant to fight the Chinese, and he just walks around yelling anti-communist propaganda while shooting people, and it's great.
Democracy is non-negotiable. Communist detected on American soil. Lethal force engaged. Communism is the very definition of failure. I die so that democracy may live.
Then finally, at the end of the game, you'll be given a few options to install the water filter or poison the water. But turns out, if you want to beat the game, you either gotta sacrifice yourself or get someone else to do it, because Bethesda can't write a good story. If you give Todd Howard your money, you'll be given the option to use a super mutant who is immune to irradiation to activate the water filter. This game tries to replicate the bleak feeling that Fallout 1 had, but it fails because it's entirely avoidable if you give Todd Howard nickels. Fallout 3 is iconic, but you do very little in the story. The player is just an observer and has little effect in it. I think Fallout 3 is a solid game, but it's outshined by its sequel in every way. No, not that one. This one. Fallout New Vegas is the best Fallout game, and it's the only modern one not made by Bethesda. Little convenient, don't you think? Fallout New Vegas was made by Obsidian, which is made up of multiple people who worked on the original Fallout, but it was only given 18 months to make it. So it was rushed and bug-filled, but everything else in the game makes up for it. Fallout New Vegas starts with the most iconic intros in gaming, where a guy shoots you.
You've made your last delivery, kid. Sorry you got twisted up in this scene. From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-carat run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
If you recognize the voice, the man who shoots you was voiced by Matthew Perry, who was a fan of Fallout 3. Many say his performance was bad, but I think it was pretty good. But after getting shot in the head, you realize that this is a Fallout game and weapons are as efficient as the United Nations Human Rights Council, so you get rescued. So after you make your character, you head into the town of Good Springs. So there's a conflict in the city between the residents of it and the Powder Gainers, which are a gang of people who recently escaped prison. You can side with one of the sides, and this will result in a firefight. This beginning side quest shows how the faction system works in the game. So the first goal is to find the person who shot you in the city of New Vegas, but the direct route to the city is dangerous with Deathclaws and even worse, Cazadors. There is also a mountain range in the middle of the map, so you have to go around the entire map to get to Vegas. The first pit stop on your journey is Prim, which is a town overran by criminals and under lockdown by the NCR. Once you do all that, you discover the man who shot you is in Nipton, a town to the east. But once you arrive in Nipton, a man approaches you saying he won the lottery and sounds out of his mind. Then you walk into the city and there seems to be a small issue. The entire town has been killed. You discover the entire town has been conquered by Caesar's Legion. So I mentioned two major factions, so I should probably explain what they do. The NCR stands for the New Californian Republic, and it is based in, well, California. They are basically America 2.0. From the creators of the Weeaboo, we present to you the Romaboo. Caesar's Legion is just a bunch of Romaboos who follow this guy named Edward. He has built a giant empire in Arizona, New Mexico, and that area. Most of the empire is built off slavery, and many more of the strange Fallout fans obsess over this faction. Both of these factions want control of Hoover Dam because it's extremely valuable because it produces a lot of electricity. There are also two other powers, but we'll talk about them later. So after you go to Nipton, you'll find out he went to Novak. And once you go to Novak, you'll discover he actually went to Boulder City. And take a guess what you'll find out when you go to Boulder City. He's actually in Vegas. So you'll arrive to the outskirts of Vegas called Freeside, which is basically South Chicago. The gate to actual Vegas is guarded by robots, so you'll have to either have 2,000 caps or have NCR citizenship to enter the city. If your luck stat is high and you gamble, you'll win every single hand and make a lot of money. If you do not have that, the easiest way to enter the city is by helping a gang of Elvis Presley impersonators called the Kings. If you do missions for them, they'll give you either $2,000 or fake NCR citizenship, which will give you access to New Vegas. Once you arrive to New Vegas, you'll find free casinos and Mr. House. Mr. House is important because he made a few inventions and built a missile defense system around Vegas. He is in cryogenic sleep and will only talk to you through a computer. Once you find Benny, kill him right away. If you don't, he'll escape to Caesar's Legion. While at his casino, you may find Yes Man, a reprogrammed robot who will blindly help you. While in Vegas, you'll also meet the two other casinos, the Omertas, which is the Mafia, and the White Glove Society, which are cannibals. While at Vegas, you'll get job offers from Caesar's Legion and the NCR. This playthrough I didn't know who to side with, so I used the process of elimination. The NCR makes you pay taxes and is pretty corrupt, so that's a no. Caesar's Legion is held up by Elmer's glue and is solely reliant on one guy. Yes Man could be good, but destroying all government is probably not a good idea, so I chose Mr. House since we both don't like taxes. So once you side with a faction, you'll do a variety of quests deciding the fate of the many smaller factions around Vegas. Eventually, the second battle of Hoover Dam broke out and I had to fight through the Legion. Eventually, you'll encounter the final boss, Legate Lanius, which there are 2 ways to defeat him. You can shoot him with your nuke launcher, or you can tell him how the Legion will fail and he will surrender. Then the NCR breaks into the Legion camp and you get surrounded, then boom, Ron Perlman. While Fallout 3 was good versus evil, New Vegas discusses how society should be run. Sure, it's not that good, it's basically a choose what political ideology simulator, but a good one. So what can we learn through all these games? Nothing. These games are made by different people from across the world at different times. I try to put some meaning behind all these games, but I sound like an idiot who thought he knew what he was talking about. I may make a video about a specific game in this video, I may not, I don't know. See you all later. Thank you for watching all this. Bye!